Welcome to the Stoic tide. They didn't hurt you by accident. They chose to. So, the real question isn't why did they do it. It's how will you treat those who intentionally tried to break you? Because your answer decides everything that comes next. Your peace, your power, your future. The world will bait you into drama. Your ego will demand revenge. But the Stoics knew a sharper weapon than anger: mastery of self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed." That isn't denial. That is sovereignty. Tonight we draw a clean line. No more bleeding energy to prove your pain. No more negotiating with people who profit from your reaction. No more renting your mind to their chaos. Here's the frame. Emotional intelligence over impulse. Psychological boundaries over people. Pleasing, self-worth over seeking approval. Inner peace over every performance of power. You won't outshout a manipulator. You outclass them by refusing to play if they wounded you on purpose. Understand this. Their cruelty is not your mirror. It's their confession. Your calm exposes their chaos. Your silence ends their leverage. Your discipline becomes their defeat. In this video, you'll learn the Stoic way to treat those who hurt you deliberately, how to see through projection and envy, how to enforce boundaries without bitterness, how to forgive for your freedom and still walk away, and how to rebuild a high-performance mindset that no insult can reach. Don't descend, ascend, protect your peace. Guard your focus and rise so quietly that the only sound they hear is their power leaving. There is a pain sharper than any accident, deeper than any careless word, the pain of being hurt on purpose, not a slip of the tongue, not an outburst in the heat of the moment, but a wound inflicted with intent, delivered with clear eyes and steady hands. You know that feeling when someone who knows your weaknesses decides to use them against you. A trusted friend betrays your secret. A partner twists your love into a weapon. A colleague undermines you publicly. Not by mistake, but by design. That kind of injury is different. It doesn't just sting. It shakes the foundation of trust itself. The Stoics understood this dark reality. They never pretended that life would only deal us accidents. They knew that some people act out of envy, malice, or insecurity. Epictetus once said, "When someone is properly grounded in life, they will not take the bait of offense." Notice his words. He acknowledges that others will bait you, provoke you, even plot against you. The key is not to deny their intent, but to see it clearly without being consumed by it. The first step in dealing with those who intentionally hurt you is recognition. Stop sugarcoating their motives. Stop telling yourself, maybe they didn't mean it, when the evidence says otherwise. Emotional intelligence is not about making excuses for cruelty. It is about perceiving reality with clarity. If someone shows you through words or patterns that harming you brings them satisfaction, believe it not to drown in bitterness, but to stand firm in truth. But here lies the paradox. While recognition is vital, reaction is dangerous. When you allow their malice to define your response, you give them exactly what they wanted: control. The more you rage, the more they feel powerful. The more you crumble, the more they feel victorious. This is why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Their choice to wound is outside your control, but your choice to remain unbroken, that is entirely yours. Think of it like this. Their cruelty is not a reflection of your weakness, but of their chaos. A person at peace has no need to destroy. A secure soul has no interest in provoking pain. So when someone acts with deliberate harm, they are revealing more about themselves than about you. They are exposing the fractures in their own spirit. Your task is to recognize it without letting those fractures spread into your own. Consider the story of a young man betrayed by a lifelong friend. This friend knew his deepest fears and mocked him in public just to feel powerful. In that moment, humiliation surged through him. His first instinct was to retaliate, but instead he looked his betrayer in the eye and said, "If hurting me was your way of feeling strong, then I pity you." Then he walked away. He didn't shout. He didn't crumble. He didn't seek revenge. His calm unsettled his enemy more than any retaliation ever could. That is the essence of Stoic power. To recognize intention without surrendering peace. To see the knife in their hand and refuse to let it cut your spirit. Yes, they aimed to wound you. Yes, it was deliberate. But the deeper danger is not their action. It is what you allow it to turn you into. When you pretend malice doesn't exist, you live in denial. When you obsess over it, you live in chains. The balance is in recognition without reaction. Clarity without collapse. You cannot control whether someone shoots an arrow, but you can control whether you let it pierce your identity. So pause and ask yourself, Who in your life has repeatedly shown you their intent? Who smiles in your face but delights in your pain? Who crosses your boundaries not from ignorance but from choice? Recognize them. Not with rage, not with endless explanations, simply with sober clarity. Because clarity is the first step to freedom. Here is the truth. Those who deliberately hurt you are not strong. They are weak. Their cruelty is a confession of emptiness, a desperate attempt to project their own brokenness onto you. Once you see this, their power dissolves. What felt like a crushing blow reveals itself for what it is, an echo of their own insecurity. And in that recognition, you reclaim something priceless, your self-worth. You remember that being targeted does not mean you are weak. It means you carry something they envy. You remember that your peace is too valuable to trade for their drama. You remember that the first act of strength is not revenge but recognition, because once you see clearly, you are no longer their puppet. You are no longer caught in the theater of their cruelty. You stand where they cannot reach, rooted in truth, shielded by boundaries and steadied by inner peace. And from this place we move forward. Recognition is not enough. You must also understand why they aim to hurt you. For clarity without context leaves the wound open. In the next chapter, we will peel back the layers of envy, projection, and fear that drive people to deliberately harm others, and why seeing their motives clearly is the key to breaking free. When someone hurts you intentionally, the natural question is why? Why would someone you trusted, someone who once smiled in your face, decide to wound you on purpose? The Stoics would caution us not to drown in that question, but they would also urge us to understand the forces that drive cruelty, because when you see through the mask, their power over you begins to collapse. The first truth is this: people project their chaos onto others. Epictetus wrote, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." A person consumed by bitterness interprets your success as an insult. A person trapped in fear sees your freedom as a threat. A person insecure in their worth projects that insecurity onto you when they lash out. It's less about your flaws and more about their inability to manage their own demons. In other words, they are not really fighting you. They are fighting the mirror you hold up to their inadequacy. The second truth is envy. Envy disguises itself as hostility. Marcus Aurelius observed that people often harm others because they cannot stand to see them flourish. Envy whispers, "If I cannot have it, neither can you." Your peace disturbs those drowning in chaos. Your dignity exposes those who live without it. Your confidence unsettles those who thrive on manipulation. Instead of building themselves, they try to tear you down. But here's the irony. Their envy is not proof of your weakness. It's evidence of your light. If nothing about you threatened their darkness, they would have left you alone. The third truth is control. Hurting you gives them a temporary illusion of power. A manipulator thrives on reaction. When they see you flinch, when they hear your voice break, when they watch you stumble in anger, they feel in control. But this control is fragile. It only exists as long as you give it to them. Seneca, he who angers you conquers you. Their cruelty is a trap. They want you to react, to spiral, to validate their power with your pain. The moment you withhold that reaction, the illusion shatters. Let's bring this into the real world. Imagine a workplace where one colleague always undermines another in meetings. Why? Because deep down that colleague fears being outshined. He projects his own inadequacy by belittling others. He envies the recognition they receive, so he tries to drag them down. And by creating public embarrassment, he gains a fleeting sense of control. But if the target refuses to react, responding with calm clarity, instead the aggressor's strategy collapses. Their power vanishes in the silence. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Those who hurt you deliberately are revealing their own brokenness. Their cruelty is not strength, it is desperation. Their betrayal is not about your worth, it is about their emptiness. When you understand this, you begin to see clearly you are not the problem. Their chaos is. And yet the danger remains. Because knowing why they act this way doesn't stop the pain. In fact, sometimes understanding their motives makes the wound sharper. That's why the Stoics teach us this balance. Seek understanding, but do not seek justification. You can see their envy without excusing their betrayal. You can recognize their projections without taking them on as your own. This is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. Emotional intelligence allows you to perceive not just the surface insult, but the insecurity underneath. Instead of asking, "Why would they hurt me?" you start asking, "What wound inside them made this possible?" This shift doesn't erase the pain, but it removes the poison. Because once you see their cruelty for what it truly is a mirror of their own weakness. You stop internalizing it as a measure of your worth. Think of it this way. If someone throws mud at you, it dirties your clothes, but it doesn't change who you are. The mud reveals more about their hands than about your soul. Your task is not to carry the mud into tomorrow, but to wash it off and walk forward untarnished. So why do they do it? Projection, envy, control. Each of these motives is rooted not in strength but in fracture. Each act of cruelty is less about you and more about the storm inside them. And once you recognize this, you hold a new kind of power, the power to detach. Because now when their words cut or their silence wounds, you no longer see a giant towering over you. You see a broken person throwing shadows. And that realization is liberating. It keeps you from surrendering your peace to their chaos. But recognition and understanding are only the beginning. The next challenge is avoiding the trap most people fall into: responding with rage, seeking revenge, letting bitterness write the next chapter. That is where many destroy themselves more thoroughly than any enemy could. And that is where we turn next. In the following chapter, we will confront the most common mistake after betrayal, the urge to retaliate, and why Stoicism insists that revenge is not strength, but self-destruction. When someone deliberately hurts you, the instinct is immediate. Fight back. Anger surges like fire in your chest. Thoughts of revenge whisper in your mind, promising justice, offering relief, seducing you with the illusion of power. But here lies the most common mistake: confusing retaliation with strength. The Stoics warned us centuries ago that anger is a chain, not a weapon. Seneca wrote, "He who seeks revenge harms himself." Notice the wisdom when you pour your energy into revenge. You keep yourself tied to the very person who wounded you. They continue to live rent-free in your mind, shaping your choices, dictating your focus. Revenge feels like reclaiming power, but in truth, it extends their power over you. Let's look at the cycle. They hurt you on purpose. You react with rage. Maybe you confront them with insults. Maybe you plot a way to humiliate them back. Maybe you drown yourself in bitterness, replaying the wound. For a moment, you feel a spark of satisfaction. But when the fire fades, what's left? More emptiness, more exhaustion, more proof that they still control your emotional state. Emotional intelligence reveals the trap. Clearly, anger and revenge are not release. They are reinforcement. Every time you replay the betrayal in your mind, you relive the wound. Every time you imagine your revenge, you are still centering your life around the person who harmed you. They may have cut you once, but through your obsession, you cut yourself 1,000 times more. Stoicism calls us to a higher path: restraint, not retaliation. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is not passivity, it is mastery. It takes more strength to govern your impulses than to unleash them. Anyone can lash out. Few can remain composed. Think of two boxers in a ring. One grows reckless with anger, throwing wild punches, burning energy. The other remains calm, focused, strategic. Who wins? Not the one who burns out in rage, but the one who masters himself. Life works the same way. Your enemies want to provoke chaos. The moment you erupt, they've already won. But when you stay calm, when you refuse to enter the arena of drama, their victory collapses. History is filled with stories of those who rose above retaliation. One such example is Nelson Mandela, who after decades of imprisonment walked free and chose reconciliation over revenge. He understood what the Stoics taught: retaliation chains you to the past, while restraint frees you for the future. His enemies expected bitterness. His composure disarmed them. That is power. Now let's be honest. It is tempting to imagine revenge. It feels good in fantasy. But here is where discipline steps in. Spiritual discipline and psychological boundaries remind you your peace is more valuable than their drama. Every ounce of energy spent on vengeance is energy stolen from your growth. Every thought rehearsing what you would say is a thought not building the life you deserve. So ask yourself, is it worth it? Is their downfall more valuable than your rise? The Stoic answer is clear. No. True strength is not making them hurt like you did. It is refusing to let their cruelty reshape you into something smaller, harder, colder. True strength is keeping your self-worth intact while they crumble under their own chaos. Consider this. Revenge is about them. Discipline is about you. Revenge says, I'll prove you wrong. Disciplinina says, I don't need to prove anything. I know who I am. Revenge focuses on their collapse. Discipline focuses on your rise. Which path creates freedom? Which path creates peace? The Stoics saw anger as a temporary madness. It blinds judgment, erodes clarity, and often causes more harm than the original insult. Epictetus taught, when you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings, then you will forget your anger. In other words, let the wound remind you to grow, not to destroy. So the next time betrayal burns in your chest, pause her, feel the rage, but don't obey it. Acknowledge the urge for revenge, but don't feed it. Instead, choose indifference, not apathy, but sovereignty. The decision that says, your cruelty no longer dictates my story, because here is the brutal truth. Anger is easy, revenge is tempting, but peace is rare and peace is priceless. Don't sell your peace for the cheap thrill of retaliation. Don't hand over your self-mastery to those unworthy of it. In the next chapter, her restraint turned the stage of humiliation into a mirror of his own insecurity. This is the Stoic advantage. When cruelty meets calm, it collapses. When manipulation meets clarity, it withers. When provocation meets silence, it loses oxygen. You don't defeat your enemy by ouching them. You defeat them by refusing to descend to their level. This requires two tools: psychological boundaries and inner peace. Psychological boundaries remind you that their behavior is not yours to own. Their words are not truth, only noise. Inner peace shields you from absorbing their chaos. When your mind is steady insult, think of boundaries as armor and peace as the shield. Together they make you untouchable. When they strike, they hit metal, not flesh. When they provoke, they meet silence, not surrender. And here's the paradox. The calmer you remain, the more powerful you become. Why? Because you show them that their tactics no longer work. Nothing frightens a manipulator more than realizing they've lost control of your emotions. Nothing frustrates an enemy more than discovering their cruelty cannot move you. This is not about pretending you are unaffected. It's about rising to a level where their actions no longer decide your mood, your choices, or your identity. You stop living in reaction and start living in intention. That is Stoic freedom. Ask yourself what would happen if you stopped playing their game altogether. If you no longer explained yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. If you no longer gave your energy to people addicted to conflict, the answer is simple. You would reclaim your life. So the next time someone provokes you deliberately, remember they've set the stage, but you don't have to perform. Their game only works if you participate. Decline the invitation. Control your response. Protect your peace. And in that refusal, you've already won. From here, we turn to an even sharper tool: indifference. Not apathy, but the highest form of self-respect. The power to look at cruelty and say, you no longer live here. Not in my mind, not in my heart, not in my story. That is where we go next. Most people misunderstand indifference. They think it means you no longer care, that your heart has grown cold, that you've shut yourself off from love and humanity. But Stoic indifference is something entirely different. It is not apathy. It is mastery. It is the conscious decision to withdraw your energy from what does not deserve it. The world expects a reaction. Those who hurt you expect tears, rage, explanations. They want your emotions to prove their importance. But when cruelty meets calm, when betrayal meets silence, when provocation meets indifference, it creates a disturbance more powerful than any retaliation. Because nothing unsettles an aggressor more than realizing they no longer matter to you. Marcus Aurelius taught, you always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. That is the essence of disciplined indifference. It is not that you don't feel. It is that you refuse to let their actions dictate your feelings. Think of it this way. When someone deliberately wounds you, they are throwing poison if you drink it by obsessing over their words, replaying the betrayal or chasing revenge. The poison spreads. Indifference is the act of refusing the cup. You see the venom. You acknowledge it exists, but you do not swallow it. There is strength in that refusal. It is not weakness to walk away without explanation. It is not defeat to ignore their games. It is a declaration of self-worth. Because when you withhold your energy, you are saying, my peace is more valuable than your drama. My growth is more important than your chaos. Consider the story of a woman betrayed by a lifelong friend. Lies were spread. Trust was shattered. At first, she wanted to fight back to prove her innocence, to expose the betrayal. But one day she realized she didn't need to prove anything. So she went silent, not out of fear, but from clarity. She stopped explaining. She stopped chasing apologies. She simply lived with dignity. And over time, her betrayer's voice faded into irrelevance. That silence was not coldness. It was sovereignty. Indifference is not about denying pain. It is about refusing to let pain become your compass. It means you still feel anger, sadness, disappointment, but you choose not to act from those emotions. You choose not to let them write your story. Emotional intelligence teaches us this. Feelings are visitors, not rulers. You can acknowledge them without obeying them. And here's the paradox. Indifference often hurts your enemies more than anger ever could. Anger feeds them attention. Silence starves them. Indifference exposes the truth. They cannot bear that their cruelty has no power over you. But let's be clear. Indifference does not mean tolerating abuse. It does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means setting psychological boundaries so firm that you no longer allow repeated harm. It means saying you no longer live in my mind, my heart, or my future. It is walking away without bitterness, carrying your peace like a crown. This is why indifference is not coldness. It is wisdom. Coldness shuts the world out. Indifference simply chooses what enters. Coldness kills love. Indifference protects it, so that when true kindness arrives, you can receive it without the weight of past poison. So the next time you are tempted to prove yourself, to shout back, to demand recognition, pause. Remember that your silence speaks louder than their noise. Remember that your calm is the storm they cannot weather. Remember that indifference chosen deliberately is the highest declaration of freedom, because when you stop reacting, you stop being their puppet. And when you stop being their puppet, you become untouchable. From here we move into the next lesson, forgiveness and walking away. Not forgiveness to welcome them back, but forgiveness as the final act of self-liberation. That is where we go next. Those who intentionally hurt you rarely stop at the act itself. They linger, watching, waiting. Why? Because the real prize they seek is not the injury, it's the reaction. Their cruelty is bait, and the moment you respond with rage, tears, or endless explanations, you step into the trap they set. Silence then is not weakness. Silence is strategy. It is how you turn the entire game upside down. Think, I don't need to waste myself proving it to you. That is the quiet strength of a high-performance mindset. It transforms you from a target into an untouchable force. And remember, this silence is not empty. It is full of choice. It's you choosing self-worth over pettiness, inner peace over case, discipline over drama. So the next time someone provokes you, pause. Resist the urge to clap back, to explain, to prove. Instead, stand firm in silence. Let them fail. Let them expose themselves. Your quiet is not surrender. It is sovereignty. And as we move forward, we turn to the next step, forgiveness. Not the kind that welcomes them back into your life, but the kind that releases you from the poison of resentment. Because true liberation comes not just from silence, but from letting go completely. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood virtues. Many people believe it means excusing the offender, welcoming them back, or pretending the wound never existed. But Stoicism, and indeed spiritual discipline, offers a deeper, more liberating truth. Forgiveness is not about them. It is about you. When you hold on to anger, bitterness, or the desire for revenge, you chain yourself to the very people who hurt you. You carry them into every new day, every conversation, every quiet moment. They still own space in your mind. In essence, the wound becomes your prison. Forgiveness is the key. Not because it frees them from accountability, but because it frees you from captivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way of avenging yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer. To forgive is not to forget. It is to refuse to let their cruelty reshape you into something bitter and small. It is the decision to rise above, to protect your inner peace, and to reclaim your energy for what truly matters, your growth, your future, your life." Think of forgiveness like setting down a heavy stone you've been carrying for miles. The stone doesn't disappear, but you no longer break your back dragging it forward. Your journey becomes lighter, your vision clearer, your steps freer. That is what forgiveness does for the soul. But let's be honest, forgiveness is not easy. It goes against every impulse of the ego. The ego whispers, if you forgive, they win. If you let go, you're weak. Yet the opposite is true. Weakness is clinging to resentment, replaying the pain until it consumes you. Strength is releasing it. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is sovereignty. Psychological boundaries are essential here. Forgiveness does not mean re-entry. You can forgive someone fully and still never allow them back into your circle. You can forgive and still cut ties, still say no more. In fact, real forgiveness often requires distance, because keeping your boundaries intact is how you protect the freedom forgiveness gives you. Take the story of a man betrayed in business by a close friend. For months he burned with anger, fantasizing about lawsuits and revenge, but all it did was poison his mind and distract him from rebuilding. Eventually he made a choice. He forgave not to reconcile, but to release himself from obsession. He cut ties, set boundaries, and used the freed energy to build something greater than what was destroyed. Years later he was thriving. His betrayer was stuck in mediocrity. His forgiveness was not for them. It was his ticket out of bondage. Emotional intelligence reframes forgiveness as self-preservation. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve peace. You forgive because carrying anger steals your clarity, drains your energy, and blurs your purpose. Inner peace cannot coexist with constant resentment. And here's the paradox. Forgiveness can become the most painful form of punishment for those who wronged you. When you forgive, you show them their cruelty no longer defines you. When you move on, you prove they failed to destroy you. And when you thrive, you remind them that their betrayal only made you stronger. Forgiveness then becomes a weapon not of vengeance, but of transcendence. But make no mistake, forgiveness is a process, not a switch. It takes time. Some days you'll feel free. Other days the memory will sting again. That's normal. Forgiveness is less about erasing the past and more about choosing again and again, not to let it rule you. It's a discipline one. You practice daily until the chains finally fall away. So the next time someone asks why forgive them after what they did, your answer is simple. Because I refuse to live as their prisoner any longer. Forgiveness is the final stage of detachment. First you silence them. Then you build boundaries. Finally, you let go completely. In that release, you step into a freedom they cannot touch. And now as we move into the next chapter, we will explore what happens after forgiveness, the rise, how to rebuild. Not just what you lost, but something far stronger. An identity forged in resilience. Discipline and unshakable peace. Forgiveness is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of something new. Once you release the weight of bitterness, you stand before a clean slate. The past remains, yes, but it no longer dictates your future. Now comes the moment the Stoics spoke of so often: rebuilding yourself. Not weaker, not the same, but stronger than ever before. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. The betrayal, the wound, the injustice, they are not your final story. They are merely the soil in which your new roots can grow deeper. Every collapse is also a clearing. Every ending creates space for a rebirth. But here's the challenge. Too many people attempt to rebuild by recreating the life they had before. They chase the same relationships, repeat the same patterns, and wonder why the cracks reappear. True rebuilding doesn't mean restoring the old house. It means designing a stronger foundation, one built with clarity, boundaries, and purpose. Think of a blacksmith forging steel. The fire doesn't weaken the metal, it tempers it. In the same way, your suffering, when embraced with wisdom, becomes the furnace that forges resilience. The pain doesn't define you, but it refines you. Emotional intelligence turns betrayal into insight. Self-worth transforms rejection into fuel. Inner peace converts case into clarity. I recall the story of a woman whose entire business empire collapsed after being sabotaged by a partner she trusted for months. She grieved, nearly paralyzed by despair. But one day, standing before the ruins of her office, she whispered, "He took what I had, but he will not take who I am." That single decision was the spark she rebuilt, not to prove anything to her betrayer, but to prove to herself that her worth was not tied to loss. Years later, her second business thrived far beyond the first. The betrayal that nearly destroyed her became the fire that made her unstoppable. This is the Stoic way. You do not rise to erase the pain. You rise to show that it cannot erase you. Your silence, your self-mastery, your persistence. These are louder than any revenge. But how do you rebuild in practice? 1. Redefine your values. Pain strips away illusion. Ask yourself, what truly matters to me? Now build around those answers. Not fear if trust was broken. Rebuild not with cynicism, but with discernment. 2. Strengthen your boundaries. Betrayal teaches you where the cracks were. Now is the time to draw firmer lines. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. This is psychological discipline in action. 3. Cultivate a high-performance mindset instead of replaying the past. Channel energy into growth study. Create, build. Let your actions speak more than your wounds. 4. Practice spiritual discipline. Set aside time each day for stillness, gratitude, reflection. The Stoics meditated daily not on revenge but on virtue. That inner work is the architecture of resilience. 5. Transform the narrative. Stop asking why me and start asking what now. Pain ceases to be an enemy once it becomes a teacher. This rebuilding is not loud. It's not about showing the world how fine you are. It is quiet, steady, and intentional. It's in the small habits saying no when you mean no, protecting your mornings, choosing peace over drama, nurturing your craft. Over time, those small acts accumulate into a fortress no betrayal can breach. And here's the irony. The same people who tried to break you will one day watch you rise in disbelief. They will see your calm, your growth, your quiet success, and realize that their cruelty became the very reason you became untouchable. That is the sweetest form of justice. Not shouting, not revenge, but living free, dignified and unstoppable. Seneca said, "Fire tests gold. Adversity tests brave men. Your suffering is not proof of weakness. It is proof you were chosen to be refined. You are not the wound. You are the strength that survived it." So as you stand now among the ashes of what was, do not waste time trying to glue the past together. Use those ashes as soil for something stronger. Let every scar remind you not of what you lost, but of what you gained: clarity, strength, boundaries, and wisdom. And from this place you rise, not bitter, not broken, but rebuilt, stronger, freer, untouchable. Rebuilding yourself after being wounded is only half the journey. The harder part is keeping what you've rebuilt, refusing to let the past or those who hurt you reclaim space in your mind. This is the stage the Stoics called inner discipline, a quiet strength not loud but unshakable. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. The peace you've rebuilt cannot be tied to the actions or words of others. It must be anchored in your own discipline, in how you think, how you respond, and how you choose to live each day. 1. Protecting the mind from old ghosts. The one who hurt you may be gone, but their shadow can still live in your head. A name, a memory, even a dream can pull you back into the storm. This is the greatest trap. The battlefield is no longer out there, but inside your thoughts. Epictetus warned, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That means you must train your mind the way you train a muscle. Notice when an old memory or toxic thought arises. Pause or observe and choose not to be carried away. 2. Choosing response over impulse. When someone provokes you, when rumors spread, or when old wounds are poked, instinct urges you to react with anger, defense, or retaliation. But inner discipline gives you the ability to choose your response instead of obeying impulse. This is emotional intelligence at its highest form. Not letting feelings lead, but letting reason shape your path. 3. Practicing purposeful silence. Silence is not always avoidance. In Stoicism, purposeful silence is power. When you stay quiet, not because you're afraid, but because you have nothing to prove, you send the strongest message. I control myself. Therefore, I am free. That is spiritual discipline. Training the soul not to depend on validation or humiliation from others. 4. Building habits that guard your peace. Peace is not a natural state. It is the result of daily habits. Stoics kept journals to self-examine. Many practiced morning reflection or meditation to reset their mind. These habits are your shield wall against external chaos. Over time, you'll realize no one can invade your peace unless you give them permission. 5. Boundaries and consistency. Inner discipline must be paired with psychological boundaries. Setting limits is one thing. Enforcing them consistently is the true test. Many people draw a line but erase it out of fear of rejection, loneliness, or judgment. But every time you allow someone to cross your boundary, you betray yourself. And no wound is deeper than the one caused by self-betrayal. 6. Becoming the gatekeeper of your mind. Picture your mind as a fortress. Not everyone deserves entree. The books you read, the conversations you allow, the people you let influence you, they're all guests. Inner discipline makes you the gatekeeper. Those who bring clarity, courage, and strength are welcome. Those who bring envy, shoe, or poison must stop at the gate. 7. Living in the present, not the past. Stoicism insists on the power of the present. The past can teach you, but if you dwell there, it chains you. Inner discipline is reminding yourself daily that the present moment is all you truly own, and this moment does not need to be defined by an old wound. The bottom line, inner discipline doesn't make you emotionless. It makes you sovereign. It ensures that no memory, no trigger, no person dictates your state of mind. It is emotional intelligence at its most mature form. Self-mastery. psychological boundaries, spiritual discipline, and inner peace reinforced by habit. When you hold this discipline, the peace you've rebuilt is no longer fragile. It becomes a fortress untouchable, unshakably, and beyond the reach of anyone who once tried to break you. After forgiveness, after rebuilding inner discipline and setting firm boundaries, the journey isn't over. It's only beginning. True healing isn't measured by how much pain you've survived. It's measured by how you choose to live from this day forward. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't waste time debating what a good man should be. Be one." That is the essence of this final stage, transforming pain into a life of meaning. It's no longer about arguments, explanations, or even closure. Your life itself becomes the answer. The ones who hurt you may never apologize. Judas may never arrive, but you don't need it to live with meaning. Meaning comes from the choices you make each day. Choosing peace over resentment, growth over repetition, building over destruction. A purpose bigger than pain. You can't erase the memory, but you can put it in perspective. A wound can close you off, or it can open a new path. A path of self-mastery, compassion, and unshakable clarity. When you live with a clear sense of purpose, the past becomes just another closed chapter. It no longer defines who you are. Answer through quiet success. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to broadcast your healing. The way you rebuild your life through steadiness, resilience, and quiet achievement is the loudest answer of all. Your peace, your growth, and your progress speak louder than revenge ever could. That's when those who tried to break you are forced to face the truth. They failed. 3. Meaning through service. Stoicism doesn't just teach us to control ourselves. It calls us to live in a way that strengthens others. When you turn your pain into empathy, when your experience becomes encouragement for someone else walking through betrayal, you've transformed a personal wound into a gift for the world. That's the deepest kind of meaning. Your scars helping others find light. 4. The final message. Life is not defined by what people did to you. It's defined by how you chose to respond. You don't need to prove they were wrong. You only need to live in a way that proves you were right to keep going. The greatest strength is not in revenge, but in your ability to move forward with a heart that no longer carries their weight. The bottom line, they may have written a dark chapter in your life, but you are the author of what comes next. And when you write it with peace, purpose, and resilience, you don't just heal, you become living proof of an unshakable truth. No one defines you but you. So here you stand, no longer broken, no longer defined by betrayal, but reborn. What they meant for your destruction became the very fire that forged you. Every scar is now a reminder that you didn't just survive, you transformed. You rose wiser, Kalmantu, and that is the ultimate victory. Not revenge, not proving them wrong, but living free at peace and stronger than they ever imagined. Remember this: your silence is not weakness, it is mastery. Your forgiveness is not surrender, it is sovereignty. And your decision to keep walking with dignity and purpose is the loudest answer you'll ever give to those who tried to break you. Now it's your turn. If this message spoke to your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe to the Stoic Tide, because every week we bring you the tools, wisdom, and fire to live unshakable. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below. I choose peace over pain. Let the world see your declaration. Your enemies may never admit what they did, but your life will be the proof. You are not broken. You are not finished. You are rebuilding into someone unstoppable. And from this day forward, nothing and no one can touch your peace.